The Obeah woman warned her. She didn't listen. She walked into a man's life like she had every right to be there. She walked out of it with nothing but the clothes on her back and a secret that could put 3 men in prison. And the only person who saw all of it coming was a 70-year-old Trinidadian woman who burned white candles on a Wednesday and charged nothing for the truth. This is not a love story. This is what happens when a woman is warned and doesn't listen, and what she had to burn down inside herself to finally survive it. Port of Spain does not ease you in. It hits you the moment you step off the plane. The heat, the smell of wet earth and exhaust, and something sweet underneath it all that you never quite name. The sky is a particular shade of blue that feels almost aggressive after the gray of Lagos or the harmattan dust of Accra. The people move with a rhythm that is not hurried, but is never still. The island vibrates at a frequency all its own. Adiz Okonkwo arrived on a Tuesday in March with 2 suitcases, a British passport she'd earned through 7 years of freezing in Manchester, and the specific weariness of a woman who has outrun one life and is not yet sure what the next one looks like. She was 31, Nigerian, Igbo on her father's side. Her mother, a half-Yoruba woman from Ibadan who had raised 3 children almost entirely on stubbornness and pepper soup. Adiz had her mother's face, the kind that made strangers look twice, and her father's silence. The dangerous combination of the two. She had come to Trinidad because of a job, a regional operations role with a shipping company that handled freight between the Caribbean islands and West Africa. It was good work, real work, the kind that used the 10 years she had spent learning logistics, first in Manchester's cold warehouse offices, then briefly in Lagos during a return she did not stay long enough to call a homecoming. Her contact in Port of Spain was a woman named Chinyu, a fellow Nigerian who had been on the island 7 years and had married a Trinidadian man and planted herself here with the conviction of someone who has decided, finally, that this ground will do. Chinyu had found her a furnished apartment in Woodbrook, a neighborhood of frangipani trees and painted walls and rum shops that opened before noon, not as judgment, but as tradition. This place will eat you if you let it, Chinyu told her on the first night, over a pot of egusi she had cooked to welcome her. But if you learn how to move with it, boy, it will give you something too. Adiz had smiled and not said what she was thinking. I've been eaten before. I know what it feels like. I know how to come back from it. She met Kwame Asani Boateng at a function in St. Anne's, 3 months after she arrived. He was Ghanaian, Accra-born, had been in Trinidad 11 years through a complicated route involving a Canadian work permit, a business venture that collapsed in Barbados, and the kind of stubborn reinvention that West Africans in the diaspora know as simply surviving. He owned 2 things that mattered in Trinidad: a mid-sized cold storage facility in shawarmas and a reputation as a man who got things done quietly. He was 45, not traditionally handsome. He was wide in the shoulders and had the face of a man who has thought hard about many things and arrived at conclusions he keeps to himself. But he had a way of standing in a room that made you aware of him without him demanding it. The kind of presence that takes decades to develop or is simply something you are born carrying. He found Adiz near the drinks table, which was not accidental on his part, though she did not know that yet. You just reach, he said. His English had the particular flavor of a Ghanaian man who has absorbed enough Caribbean rhythm that the 2 languages move inside each other. Few months, she said. You have that look, he said, still figuring out how the place moves. How does it move? He considered the question seriously. Slow on the outside, he said, but everything underneath, fast. You have to learn to watch what's underneath. She remembered that sentence later. She wished she had understood it to be about him. The courtship happened the way courtships happen between diaspora people, over shared references, over the particular loneliness of being far from the place your body learned the world, over the warmth that comes from hearing your own registers of English in a foreign mouth. He knew Lagos. She knew a little Chui from a Ghanaian flatmate in Manchester. They laughed at things that needed no explanation because explanation would have killed the joke. He took her to Maracas Bay on a Sunday. They ate shark and bake at the roadside stalls, the fish spiced and fried inside fried bread, dripping and perfect in the way of food that was never designed to be elegant. And he watched her eat. without apology, and seemed pleased by this. He took her to a Diwali celebration in Chaguanas, and she stood in the light of thousands of dayas, small clay lamps, and felt for the first time in perhaps years that the world was large enough to still surprise her. She told Chinyu about him. Chinyu listened with the particular attention of a woman who has been on an island long enough to know its undercurrents. Kwame Asani Botang, she repeated slowly. The one with the cold storage? You know him? Chinyu was quiet for a moment. I know of him, she said. I know his name comes up in certain conversations. She chose her words in the way of someone trying to say something without being the one who said it. Just take your time. That's all. Adiz asked what that meant. Chinyu said it meant what it said. They did not speak of it again. There was a woman named Miss Pearl. She lived in Laventil, up in the hills above Port of Spain, where the houses step up the hillside like they are climbing towards something, and the view of the Gulf of Paria in the morning is the kind of beauty that makes you briefly forget the poverty living right next to it. Miss Pearl was Trinidadian, old Trinidadian, the kind whose family had been on the island so many generations that she was the island in some irreducible way. She was known in Laventil and parts of East Dry River as someone you went to when the ordinary world had run out of answers. Not a doctor, not a pastor, something older than both. Chinyu brought Adiz to her in the 7th month, and Adiz went the way she went to church back in Nigeria, not entirely believing, but not willing to bet her life on her disbelief either. Miss Pearl's house was small and immaculate. Ixora flowers grew red against the wall. The inside smelled of white rum and bay leaf and something else, something Adiz's nose could not name, but that her body recognized as serious. On a shelf, candles, bottles, small cloth bundles tied with different colored thread, a framed picture of the Black Madonna, and next to it, incongruously, a photograph of a beach at sunset that could have been anywhere. Miss Pearl was perhaps 70, perhaps older. Trinidadian women of her kind did not age in straight lines. She looked at Adiz the way a doctor looks an X-ray. Not at the surface, but at the structure underneath. Sit down, Dudu, she said. Her voice was the voice of the island itself. Warm but weighted, the kind of voice that holds things it has seen and does not perform what it knows. She did not ask questions. She simply looked. After a while, she said, The man you with, he have a door he don't open for you. Adiz said nothing. Not a metaphor, Miss Pearl said. A real door, in a real room. And what's behind it? That have a smell. That have weight. She paused. You want to know what I see when I look at you two together? Tell me. I see a woman standing in a yard, Miss Pearl said. Nice yard. Flowers and everything. But the fence, it only locked from one side. And it ain't you holding the key. She reached under the small table between them and placed an object in front of Adiz. A small glass bottle, stopped with a cork, something dark moving inside it. Oil, maybe. Something dissolved in it. I'm not telling you to leave today, she said. I know you won't listen to that yet. I'm telling you, when the sign comes, and it coming, don't you look at it and tell yourself it means something else. Women like you too smart for your own good. You will take what is clear and make it complicated, because complicated is less frightening than simple. She pushed the bottle closer. Take this. Not magic, just intention. A reminder that you already know what you know. Adiz took it. She told herself it was politeness. Outside, in Chinyu's car, going back down into the city, the Gulf enormous and silver to their left, Chinyu said, well. She told me to pay attention, Adiz said. And will you? The city received them back into its noise. Adiz did not answer. She moved into his house in Goodwood Park 8 months after they met. It was a concrete house painted the color of old cream, set back behind a wall with bougainvillea growing over it in violent pink. The neighborhood was quiet in the way of neighborhoods where money and discretion lived together. A yard man came Tuesdays and Saturdays. There was a woman named Doris who cooked and cleaned Monday through Friday, and who greeted Adiz with a warmth that was not unfriendly, but was also not entirely unguarded. The warmth of a woman who has watched this house for years and has learned not to become attached to what passes through it. Adiz noticed in the first week the room at the back. It was presented to her as a home office. The door was always closed. The one time she tried the handle. Casually, naturally, as one moved through a new home learning its geography, it was locked. Kwame said nothing about this. He had been in the kitchen when it happened and either hadn't seen or had chosen to let it pass. She did not ask. This was its own kind of surrender. The decision not to ask is also a decision. The first year was mostly what she had wanted. He was not a careless man. He remembered the things she said. He introduced her properly at functions, not as his girlfriend, which she found she minded more than she expected, but as my Adiz, which is a possessive construction she told herself was affection. He brought her to meetings with his shipping contacts, which was genuinely useful to her work. He sat with her on the veranda in the blue Trinidad evenings, the city spread below and the Gulf a dark mirror, and he was, in those moments, a man she could almost fully believe in. She sent money home to Enugu. Her mother bought a new stove. Her younger sister started a small catering business. These were real things, solid things. She held them as evidence that her choices were producing goodness somewhere. The cracks. First, a phone call he took in the car when he thought she was sleeping in the passenger seat. She heard a woman's voice, not the words, just the register. And she heard Kwame's voice change the way men's voices change when the person on the other end of the line has a particular kind of claim on them. When she opened her eyes, he ended the call. He said it was a business matter in Barbados. She logged it. She did not confront. Not yet. Second, a dinner at a restaurant in St. Clair, a nice place, the kind where the tablecloths are white and the portions are small and the wine list is longer than the food menu. A man came to their table. Trinidadian, heavy set, the kind of man who moved through rooms like he owned the floor plan. He knew Kwame. They spoke in the low tones of men who are allies in something that doesn't get named at restaurant tables. At one point the man looked at Adiz with an expression that was not attraction and was not hostility, but was something more unsettling, assessment. The look of a man deciding how much she knew and whether that was a problem. She filed this too. In the part of her that was always watching, always archiving, even when the rest of her was trying to simply live. Third, and final, she found the letter on a Wednesday. It had fallen, or been placed, she never knew which, between the cushions of the living room sofa. A handwritten letter, for pages, in a script that was careful and educated and feminine. It began, Kwame, the children have been asking why you don't call. I have been trying to find a way to answer them that is not the truth. She read all 4 pages. There was a wife, not an ex-wife. A wife, in Barbados, with 2 children, 8 and 6, who had apparently accepted some version of a long-distance arrangement she had been led to believe was temporary. The letter was not angry. That was the most devastating thing about it. It was written in the voice of a woman who has been patient past the point where patience is a virtue, and into the territory where it becomes something closer to self-destruction. A woman who still believed that if she was reasonable enough, if she asked gently enough, eventually the man she had married would return to the family he had not legally left. Adiz sat with the letter for a long time. She thought about Chinyu's careful silence. She thought about Miss Pearl's yard with the fence that only locked from one side. She thought about the bottle she had brought home and placed at the back of her wardrobe, in the pocket of a winter coat she never wore in Trinidad, in a corner of the house that was technically shared but felt unambiguously hers. She thought about herself, at 31, in a country that was not her own, in a house that was not hers, loving a man who was not available to be loved in the way she had told herself she was being loved. She put the letter back exactly where she had found it. She went to the bathroom and ran the cold tap and put her wrists under it and breathed. She thought, I have to leave. I have to leave right. Hold on. Before this story goes where it has to go, I need you to stay with it. If you've been listening and something in you has gone very quiet, that's not an accident. The part of you that's gone quiet knows exactly what it recognizes. Don't go anywhere. The rest of this is for you. She did not go back to Miss Pearl. Not yet. She went to Chinyu first, because Chinyu was the kind of friend who keeps the door unlocked even in the middle of the night, who does not say I told you even when she told you, who sets a cup of tea in front of you and waits for you to find the beginning of what you need to say. Adiz told her everything. The letter, the wife in Barbados, the children, the phone call in the car, the man at the restaurant and his assessor's eyes. Chinyu listened. When Adiz finished, Chinyu said only, How much is in your account? Enough, Adiz said. I never stopped saving. Good. Chinya nodded slowly. That's the one thing you did right from the beginning. I need to understand what I'm in the middle of before I move, Adiz said. I need to know the shape of it. Chinya looked at her for a moment. Then, the man at the restaurant, she said carefully. His name is Fitzroy. He is not simply a business contact. There are people on this island who know what Fitzroy is involved in. The cold storage and shawarmas. She stopped. Started again. There are things that go in and out of that storage that do not appear on any shipping manifest. The silence in the kitchen was very complete. You knew this, Adiz said. Not accusing, just establishing. I knew of it, Chinya said. Rumor. Island talk. You know how it goes. Sometimes the talk is malice, and sometimes the talk is warning, and you can't always tell the difference until too late. She reached across and covered Adiz's hand. I should have been clearer. I am sorry. Adiz shook her head. I should have listened to what you were trying to say. She thought about Miss Pearl's voice. You too smart for your own good. You will take what is clear and make it complicated. She had done exactly that. She had taken a man who was obviously unavailable and complicated it into a love story. She had taken warnings and complicated them into overreactions. She had taken a locked door and complicated it into privacy. She needed to stop making things complicated. She went back up to Laventil on a Saturday morning. The Ixora was still red against the wall. Miss Pearl opened the door before she knocked. She led her inside, and they sat in the same arrangement as before, the Black Madonna watching from the shelf, the unnamed smell of the room settling around them. You came back, Miss Pearl said. I came back. You heard the warning this time. I heard it, Adiz said. Too late, maybe. Miss Pearl made a small sound, not quite disagreement, not quite agreement. Never too late while you're still standing, she said. Sitting here with me means you're still standing. She studied her. What you need now is not a warning. Warning done pass. What you need now is sense. Tell me. Leave with what is yours, Miss Pearl said. Your work. Your documents. Your savings. Your good name, if you can keep it. She paused. Don't touch what is not yours. Not the business, not the storage facility, not whatever is behind that door in the back room. Don't investigate. Don't try to understand the full picture. The full picture is not for you to hold. It is too heavy, and it belongs to people who will not appreciate you carrying it. There's a wife, Adiz said. Children. I know, Miss Pearl said. I feel. I know what you feel, the old woman said, firmly but without cruelty. You feel responsible. You feel like leaving without acknowledging her makes you complicit. She leaned forward slightly. Listen to me, Dudu. You did not make him unavailable. He was unavailable when you found him. You were deceived. The wife, God keep her. She is fighting a battle that was there long before you arrived. Your leaving does not help her or hurt her in any material way. You're staying, and what might happen to you if you stay too long inside what that man is involved in? That is the thing you need to focus on. She reached into a pocket of her dress and placed something on the table. A small folded piece of yellow paper, tied with red thread. This one is not for comfort, she said. This is for clear-headedness. For the next 2 weeks, while you do what you need to do, you keep this somewhere close. Adiz took it. Outside, the Gulf was distant and huge below the hill. Port of Spain was noise and color, and the particular energy of Saturday, doubles vendors, music from somewhere, the smell of the city doing what it always did, living. She had 2 weeks. She would move like water. She was methodical in the way of a woman who has decided not to be frightened. Her documents, always in her own possession, never given to him to hold. She checked. They were where they should be. Her savings account. In her name alone, in a bank in Port of Spain that had nothing to do with him or his business. She checked the balance and breathed. Her work. The shipping company had valued her, had already discussed a possible role in their Barbados office. She called her manager and expressed renewed interest. She did this calmly, professionally, with no explanation that wasn't necessary. She moved her important clothes and personal items to Chinyu's house over 3 visits, each time taking only what would go unremarked. The kind of natural ebb of a woman's belongings that doesn't read as evacuation unless you're watching very closely. She did not know, for certain, that Kwame was watching. She found out on a Thursday. She came home from work to find him sitting in the living room. Not reading, not on his phone, simply sitting in the particular stillness of a man who has decided how a conversation is going to end before it begins. "You moving things," he said. She did not deny it. She had decided at some point in the last 2 weeks that she was done performing for this man. "Yes," she said. He was quiet for a moment. The house was quiet. Doris had gone for the day. The yard man was not there. They were alone in the cream-colored house with the bougainvillea going violent pink outside the window. "Where you think you going?" he said. His voice was still conversational. This was the most frightening version of him, the version that did not raise its voice. "Home," she said. "This is your home." "No," Adiz said. "Your home is in Barbados, with your wife and your 2 children who ask for you every night." She watched his face. "I found the letter." Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt, something more like calculation. Reassessment. The same thing she had seen in Fitzroy's eyes at the restaurant. "Adiz, I'm not asking for an explanation," she said. "I'm telling you what I know so that we understand each other. I'm leaving. I have taken what is mine. I have not touched anything that is not mine." She let that sentence sit for a moment. Let him hear everything that was inside it. The locked room, the storage facility, the shipping manifest, the name Fitzroy. "We are going to leave each other in peace." He looked at her for a long time. "You're a smart woman," he said finally. "I know," she said. She went to the bedroom and took the last bag she had prepared. The yellow folded paper was in her pocket. The small glass bottle from Miss Pearl's first visit was at the bottom of the bag. She walked out of the house in Goodwood Park in the last light of a Thursday afternoon. The bougainvillea was the same violent pink. The street was quiet. Somewhere down the hill, Port of Spain was already beginning its evening. The rum shops filling up, the music starting, the city settling into the version of itself that came out after 6 o'clock. She did not look back. Chinyu's couch for 2 weeks. Then a small apartment in Woodbrook, different street from the first one, which felt intentional, like setting down one version of a story and picking up a cleaner draft. The Barbados role came through in 6 weeks. She took it. She told herself it was career. It was also the natural logic of a woman who had been in a place where a man could find her and now needed, simply, to be somewhere else. Kwame did not pursue. This surprised her less than it might have, once she understood it. Men like him calculate risk. A woman who knows the name Fitzroy and has demonstrated she knows how to leave quietly is a woman you let go. The exposure of chasing her is greater than the exposure of her absence. She understood this and felt nothing like victory, only the flat relief of an equation that had solved itself without requiring her to sacrifice any more than she already had. Barbados received her gently. It is a different island to Trinidad, smaller, quieter in a way that goes deeper than noise level. The sea around it is a specific turquoise that seems lit from underneath. She found an apartment in Bridgetown, not far from the port where her new office was, and she set it up with the deliberate attention of a woman who has lived in other people's spaces and is now making a space that belongs entirely to herself. She worked. She was good at her work. She had always been good at her work. This was the thing that had never left her through Manchester and Lagos and Port of Spain, the one solid ground she had never lost her footing on. She built relationships with the freight operators, with the customs officers, with the women running provisions shops along the coast who imported dried fish and palm oil from Nigeria and needed someone who understood both ends of that transaction. She called her mother. Her mother asked, "Are you happy?" Adiz thought about the question for a moment. "I'm clean," she said. "I'm clear." Her mother, who understood the geography of that answer, said, "Good. That's where happy starts." She did not think about Kwame often. When she did, it was not with the hot feelings people expect, not rage, not longing, not the particular grief of romantic disappointment. It was more like thinking about whether that passed, something that happened to you, that shaped the ground somewhat, that was now simply part of the landscape. 8 months into Barbados, a man came to her office. He was a Barbadian, mid-40s, the kind of contained energy that Adiz had learned to read as either law enforcement or journalism. He introduced himself as a reporter for a regional publication that covered financial crime and trafficking in the Caribbean. He was building a long piece about the movement of contraband through cold storage facilities. He had a name, Shagwaramas. He had another name, Fitzroy. He wanted background, not testimony. Not yet, he was clear about this. Background, the kind of texture that only someone who had spent time adjacent to the operation could provide. Adiz listened to everything he said. She asked him for his credentials. She asked him who else he had spoken to. She asked him what protections he could offer a source. She asked him these questions in the calm, methodical voice of a woman who has learned that information is its own kind of power, and that power exercised carelessly is just another way of being hurt. She called Chinyu that night from Barbados. "There's a journalist," she said. Chinyu was quiet for a moment. "What kind?" "The serious kind. Are you going to talk to him?" Adiz looked out her apartment window. The Barbadian sea was dark, and the lights of Bridgetown were small and scattered. Somewhere on this island, a woman was raising 2 children alone and telling them, every night, some version of the truth that wouldn't break them yet. "I'm going to talk to my own lawyer first," Adiz said, "and then I'm going to say only what I witnessed. Not what I heard, not what I suspect. What I saw and heard directly with my own ears and eyes." She paused, "and then I'm going to let it be what it is." Chinyu said, "Your mother raised you good?" "She raised me scared," Adiz said. "I raised myself the rest of the way." The story published 14 months after she left Goodwood Park. The cold storage, the manifests, the quiet movement of things through Fitzroy's network and Kwame's infrastructure. It was not a small story. It moved through the islands the way big things move in small places, fast, hot, inescapable. There were arrests. There was a process. Adiz was not named in the story. This had been the condition. Her contribution was background, confirmation, the detail that made something credible that might otherwise have been dismissed. She had given what she had witnessed. She had not dramatized or embellished or performed the aggrieved woman. She had simply told what was true. She heard about it on a Tuesday morning, sitting in her office in Bridgetown with a cup of tea, from Chinyu, who called before she had seen the news. "It's out," Chinyu said. "Okay," Adiz said. "You all right?" She thought about it honestly. The Gulf of Paria, the bougainvillea, the locked door she had never opened, the letter she had found between the sofa cushions, written by a woman to a man who had stopped coming home, the yellow paper with nothing written on it. "Yes," she said, "I am all right." She went back to her work. Outside, the Barbadian morning was bright and salt-smelling and indifferent in the generous way of sea air, giving the same freshness to everyone, asking nothing about what they had been through to get here. She went back to Trinidad once, 8 months later, for work. She did not go to Laventille. She almost didn't. Then she did, because some things deserve to be closed properly. Miss Pearl answered the door. She looked at Adiz for a moment in the way she always looked at her, reading the structure beneath the surface. "You look like somebody who finished something," she said. "I think so," Adiz said. "I wanted to say thank you." "You don't owe me thanks," Miss Pearl said. "You did the work." "Late," Adiz said. "You did it," the old woman said. "A lot of women don't get to come back here and say they did it. Don't minimize your own thing." They sat for a short while in the compound. The Ixora flowers were still red. The view of the Gulf from up on the hill was still the kind of beautiful that doesn't care about your history. It simply is what it is, enormous and patient and going nowhere. Adiz asked the question she had been carrying for the walk up the hill. Was it always going to go this way? Miss Pearl thought about this with what felt like genuine consideration. "I don't know what was always going to happen," she said finally. "I only know what I see when I look. And what I saw the first day you came here was a woman who knew the truth and was not ready to live inside it yet." She paused. "You became ready. That's the whole story. Everything else is just what happened while you were getting there." Adiz walked back down the hill into the city. Port of Spain was doing what it always did. Loud and fragrant and brilliantly alive. The doubles carts and the maxi taxis and the school children in uniform and the old men arguing on corners about cricket and politics and the price of things. The Caribbean afternoon light was thick and gold, the kind that makes even ordinary things look like they're worth painting. She was 33 years old. She had lost a year and some months to a man with a locked room and a quiet face and a life she had not been told the full truth of. She had also, through the losing, found out what she was made of when the comfortable version of herself was taken away. She had found out she was made of the same thing her mother was made of: stubbornness, patience, the quiet ferocity of a woman who does not perform her survival. The bottle from Miss Pearl's first visit, she still had it, in the apartment in Barbados, on a shelf. She had never opened it. She had never needed to know what was inside. Its job had simply been to sit there and remind her that she had been warned once, and that she had found a way through anyway, and that this counted for something. It counted for everything. You stayed until the end. That means something. Maybe this story found you in a place where you needed to hear that leaving late is not the same as leaving wrong. That knowing the truth and not being ready for it, yet is not stupidity. It is being human. The question is never whether the warning came. It always comes. The question is only who you are on the day you finally decide to believe it. She believed it. She made it out. So can you. If this channel gives you something, a story, a night you didn't feel alone in, something you felt without knowing how to say it, subscribe. Share it. This is a space built for the ones who listen in the dark. Every story here is made for you. Don't leave without letting us know you were here. Yendi.